Okay. All right, welcome everybody to tonight's class. Oh, hang on one second. So I am very pleased to introduce you to Brian Babendererde. All
Yes.
right. So as you guys know, this is part of our Schaumburg Library Drawing School series. And we had one on Monday night, and so now we'll have this one tonight and then 2 more next week. So we are very excited for you guys to join us. And now I'm going to turn it over to Brian.
All right.
I'm sorry, real fast. We will have the chat open. So if you have questions, feel free, and then I'll try and get to those, and we can ask questions in the chat. Thanks, guys.
Okay. So a little introduction about who I am. My name is Brian Babendererde. Everybody calls me B-Man though, so they don't have to pronounce that name. So you can call me B-Man or Brian in the chat. And today I'm going to be giving a demonstration on how to draw character faces and show the basic ways that cartoonists and illustrators construct faces. So I'm going to share real quick here. So hopefully everybody can see my screen right now. So today I'm drawing in Photoshop, and I'll be drawing right on a Cintiq monitor so everybody can see what I'm drawing. But if you have paper and pencil, you can draw on paper and pencil. If you're drawing on an iPad or any other digital device, that's great too. So right off the bat, what I'd like to kind of show is when we start getting into drawing and we start learning how to draw, a lot of times people start drawing characters and they don't really construct the characters with shapes. They start drawing like they might start with an eye like this, and then they might put in another eye and figure out where the nose is and maybe start putting in a mouth. And then they start trying to figure out, well, the face is like this and it's kind of shaped like this. And that works when we're starting because we're just learning how to draw. But when we draw a character over and over and over again, multiple times, and we want that character to have the same look every time and be consistent to the character that we've created for a character design, we want to start using shapes to draw our characters and start building them up from the same basic shapes every time. And so what I'd like to show you is getting started with drawing characters from simple shapes like ovals. So what I'm going to start doing here is I'm going to just draw a simple shape that's an oval. I've kind of got a little some ghosted images for me to start drawing over here, but if you just start drawing an oval, so an oval is kind of like a circle, but it's more elongated, like an egg shape. And if you notice, I'm not really too worried about how the line quality is. I'm just using this as a guide. So this is not going to be what the finished drawing looks like. So you don't have to worry about that at this point. You just want to start with very simple shapes. And then I'm going to draw a face from the front view, which is probably the easiest thing, the easiest way to draw a face, because we don't have to worry about perspective and whether or not it's looking up or looking down. So we're going to start with a face that's looking directly at you, the camera. Think of yourself as the camera. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that oval and I'm going to draw a line down the center. And that's going to divide the face into its left half and its right half. And I'm going to put a line through the center going across. So this is basically how we start almost every character that we draw. And what these lines are now going to tell us is where the features of the face get drawn in. So for example, if I use this line that's going across the top here, that's going to tell me about where the eyes are going to go. So the eyes go just below that line and about halfway between the center line and the outside of your oval. And then when we figure out where the nose goes, we can put a line about halfway down between where the eye line is and the chin at the very bottom. And that's about where our nose is going to go. So we just put a little line there that shows us that's where our nose is going to be. At this point, we're not really worried about putting in details. We're just trying to get the basics of where the facial features are going to be. And then if we divide it again in half between the nose line that we just put in and the bottom of the oval, which again is going to be where our chin is, that's about where our mouth is going to be. And that is telling us where our basic features are going to go. Other features that you'll see from the front of the face is ears. That eye line is also used to tell us where the ears go. So your ears are they line up with the top of that eye line. And now you can see we've got a face that's developing. And the oval shape now is really the outside of the head. It's the guidelines for where the outside of our head is going to be. So we can start figuring out where our bottom of our chin is. We can start figuring out where the sides of our face are going to be. And we can start figuring out where the top of the head is. And we can even do things like about halfway between the eye and the top of the head, we can figure out where our hairline is going to be. So now we've got an actual face. And this is a good way for you to construct a character so that every time that you draw the character, you're getting the same basic proportions, the same basic character look. And we can then go in and we can start adding details for the kind of character that we're going to be drawing. So if I wanted to do somebody who was kind of a manga type character, I might be doing this and drawing in some details, but that is really up to your own personal style. And then I forgot to put eyebrows in. We should make sure that we put eyebrows above the eyes. So that's drawing a character from the front. And the nice thing about this is that if you start with your same oval every time, I'm going to start a new character over here. If you start with your same oval every time, and you get pretty good at drawing that first oval shape, obviously it's very important because it's the foundation of everything that you're going to do. If you want to draw the character instead of looking straight at the camera, if you want to draw the character looking off to the side, what we would call a 3/4 view, we still draw a line across the middle where our eyes are going to be. But instead of drawing a line straight down like this, we're actually going to draw a line that's curved. Because we're thinking about that character in 3D space. If this was an oval that was a three-dimensional object, it would have a curve to it when it's seen from the side. And we're going to be putting in the same basic features in the same basic places. The eyes go just below that line. The nose can put an indication of where the nose goes, about halfway between the eyes and the bottom of the oval. The mouth, about halfway between that and the bottom of the oval. Put in eyebrows. Our ears go in the same place.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
We are getting a lot of questions about what software this is. Is this Photoshop that you're using right now?
Yeah, so I'm drawing in Photoshop. I like to draw in Photoshop. I've got some nice brushes that I found for pencils that I like. I also use Corel Painter to do artwork. But there's a lot of different tools out there for people. Photoshop is fairly expensive piece of software, but there's lots of other options out there. I just happen to have a lot of experience in Photoshop. For my day job is doing video game design and art. So I'm very familiar with Photoshop. So I'm pretty comfortable drawing in it.
Okay, thanks.
So drawing the face from the 3/4 view. If you're drawing a head from a 3/4 view like this, your oval is still your basic shape, and it's still helping you figure out where all of your basic features are going, your eyes, your nose, the mouth, the eyebrows, and stuff like that. It's a little bit more complicated to figure out where the outside of the head is. So in this particular instance, I'm going to give this person a good brow here and a good cheek and come down to the chin and up to the jawline on the ear. Now I'm doing very, sort of cartoony characters. That's what I do. So I don't do super realistic stuff, and that's okay. You might want to draw characters that are even more cartoony, but the oval is still a good foundation for you to start with. And then I'm going to do one more here to show you how this works for a character that is in profile. It's very similar. We're going to start with the same oval. And again, I'm not worried too much about, making the oval look pretty. It's just a guideline. And I'm going to draw that line across for the middle. And I'm still going to put a line down the center. So now, though, I'm going to be drawing a character from complete profile view. My eye is going to go here. And again, it's still below that line. My nose is still about halfway to the bottom of the oval. Went a little too high there. I'm going to put that there. And the mouth is still halfway between that nose and the bottom of the oval. And the bottom of the oval is still our chin. And we come up here to the ear. And then the top of the oval is still the top of our head. But now we have not included the back of the head. There's got to be a place for our character's brain to be. And the way that we figure out that is you can draw another oval. It's about the same size as the first one. Horizontal like this. And that'll help you determine where the back of the head is. So, and I'm being very sketchy. I'm just, you know, when people draw characters for comic books and other things, you know, that you start sketchy. You don't worry too much about super detailed and finished drawings right away. You have to lay down your foundations of how you're going to build your character up. It's not about being, at this stage, it's not about being super detailed and super perfect. It's about discovering the character and figuring out where all of the parts of their head should be. So I'm gonna show you a character design that I've worked on. So this is a character that I've constructed with the same basic methods that I just showed. And I want to show you how I started with very simple shapes, very simple ovals, and very simple characters, very simple shapes. I mean, just figuring out, you know, where the eyes are going to be. Get another layer. Okay, so where the eyes are going to be, like here and here, and putting in the nose and mouth. And then doing more detailed drawings at this stage, which is putting in more detail about what the eyes actually look like, what the nose actually looks like, what the mouth actually looks like, and a little bit of shading. And then by the time we get to the bottom, the character design is more complete, figured out where the hair goes, the style that I'm working on, and you know, that she's got glasses and all of that stuff is finished. But the interesting thing is, oops, hold on. The interesting thing is that one of the things that we do when we're drawing characters to help us keep characters looking the same is we use these guidelines. So these guidelines that are connecting the character in the middle here, if you see, this is a very neat tool to use if you're having problems drawing a character from the front view and the side view and a 3/4 view to make them always look the same in the same proportions. These lines are basically guides that show me that, for example, this line here, that's where the character's eyebrows are at. It doesn't matter if she's looking straight at the camera. It doesn't matter if she's looking 3/4 view. It doesn't matter if she's looking in a profile view. The eyebrows are always going to be at that line. Same thing with the chin down here. Her chin is the same. And you can look at yourself in the mirror when you're drawing. That's always a good thing. And as you're drawing a character, and you can draw on yourself, you look in a mirror, if you can turn yourself sideways and still kind of see, you'll, you know, put your hand here and turn your head. Can people see me, or can they just see my screen?
No, they can see you at the top.
Okay, great. So if you put your hand under your chin and you keep your head straight and you just turn it left and right, your chin stays at the same level. Your eyebrows stay at the same level. Your head, you know, where your hair is, stays at the same level. And that's really helpful for us as artists, because it means when a character turns around, all their features can remain in the same spot. If you ever watch something that's animated and you see a character turn, you can usually tell when the animators haven't done a very good job, because the eyes might move up and down, the nose might move around. So these lines help us figure out exactly where everything's going to be when the character turns. So I used these lines on this character design to make sure that that I was keeping the nose in the same spot, the tops of the ears are in the same spot, the eyes, tops of the eyes are in the same spot, even the top of the head is in the same spot. So that's just a useful tip for how to keep your characters consistent as they turn around. So.
So when you're using Photoshop, are you doing this with a mouse, or are you on like a tablet with a pen? Okay.
Yes, I'm actually drawing on a screen. I have a Cintiq monitor. So that's
okay. That's what someone guessed. Yes.
Yeah. It's very, very hard to draw with a mouse.
Right.
Very hard.
Okay.
Using a Cintiq monitor is great. Using an iPad or any other sort of tablet, there's drawing tools for those. If you can get a pen for those, you can draw on those just like you can on paper. And of course, there's always paper. There's always the ability to go grab a piece of paper and a pencil and practice on that. So I want to show a little bit about perspective. And so this is I put together some examples of how changing the lines that we start on our oval change how we envision the character in terms of three-dimensional space. So, for example, normally, if I was drawing a character from the front, like for this guy right here, if I was drawing a character from the front, of course, I would have drawn an oval. And then I would have put a line down the center, and I would have put a line across the middle. So for this one down here, though, what I've done is I've started with my oval. Let me darken it a little bit. And I've put my line down the center, but I'm imagining that this character is actually looking up instead of looking straight at the camera. And so again, this curved line in the middle is still our eye line, and it is me imagining this oval in three-dimensional space looking up. So that means that when I actually start to draw in the features, I'm going to put the eyes in the same spot just underneath that line. And I'm going to have to use a little bit of imagination, because the chin is probably going to be more about here, which means that the halfway point with the nose is here and the mouth is here. Our ears still go, the top of our ears still meet the top of that line, but our jaw line is now going to be a little bit more like this, with neck coming up, our eyebrows. So the nose, if you imagine that the bottom of the nose is a three-dimensional shape like a triangle, when we look up, you can see the bottom of our nose. So this is a good way, using a triangle for me is a good way to imagine where the nose is going to be and how it's going to fit into 3D space. Now, when I'm drawing a finished character, you're not going to see that anymore. You'll see more something like, I might put in the eyes, maybe the character's looking up, and the nose might be more where we're seeing the nostrils and the top of the nose and the nose line that connects to our eyebrows. Mouth and our chin and ears. But I still started with that same oval, which means that I have a good foundation for how the character is going to look in three-dimensional space. The proportions are going to be similar to the way that I draw this character in other positions. So, and then this one over here, this oval here would be a character looking down. Again, I'm starting with the same basic oval, and I'm putting in a curved line to imagine that the character is looking down in 3D space. And still putting in the same basic positions of the eyes. The nose is about halfway down, but now I have to start thinking about this a little bit more in 3D space. As things go farther away from us in 3D space, that you have to sort of imagine that they're getting smaller. So when you look down and the camera's looking at the top of someone's head, their chin gets smaller, their eyes and their nose are going to be closer to each other because of perspective. But the ears go in the same space, and we figure out where the bottom of our chin is. It's still at the bottom of that oval. And now I'm going to imagine that this oval is still in 3D space and that there's a top to it, which is this. This line is where the top is. So if I draw a circle around here, it starts to look more like a three-dimensional shape. And I can go back and I can get rid of some of these lines. So now I'm looking at more of the top of someone's head. And then this one over here, similar thing. Character looking up, but in a 3/4 view. I'm still using my same guidelines, still using the same positions for where stuff goes. But I've got to do a little bit more in figuring out where the chin is. So as we start to rotate characters in lots of different positions, we have to do a little bit more, we have to use a little bit more of our imagination and guesswork to figure out, you know, where things are, but the oval is still a good starting place for us to do that from.
So Brian, we're getting some questions about how to determine how you're drawing the neck.
Okay. So the neck from a character that is from the front really depends. Here's a little example I put together. So this guy down here. Okay, so this guy down here, I've got, you know, I've constructed him based on my oval, you know, and that's all great and everything. But yeah, where does his neck connect? So it really depends on the kind of character that you're drawing. I mean, you know, if you're drawing a very cartoony character, you can get away with very thin necks or very thick necks. In general, from a front view, I like to put the neck on a typical person just inside this jawline. So if this is your jawline, that's the bottom of your head. It's where your jaw comes down and then connects to your chin. The neck is just within that. Now, if I was drawing a more muscly character, I'd get rid of these and I might have the neck way out here. You know, someone who's like really muscly. You know, that kind of character has a much thicker neck. And if I was drawing a more thinner character, I might even give them a very thin neck. On other views like this profile view over here, you know, I figured out where the character's chin is at. And again, I started with this oval shape that's here to help me do that. Whoops, to help me do that. The back of the head has to be added with our secondary oval. And then the neck connects in the back and it connects underneath the chin. So I'm not going to lie, necks are really hard. Necks are very challenging. It can take a while to figure out on a more realistic figure where the neck really connects to the head, because we get used to drawing the head as almost, especially cartoonists, we get used to drawing this head as a sort of a flat shape, and we just think of the neck as being something, oh, it connects the head to the body. And if you're drawing very cartoony, like Sunday morning comic strip kind of stuff, the neck is yeah, it can be very simple. Drawing the neck for more realistic character can be a little bit more complex. One way to think about the neck is if you have the head. Let me do a real quick one here. If you have the head started from this sort of view, we start putting in the shape of the. So again, building it up from the same oval. The neck really has to kind of connect right about here, you know, behind the head, and then come down into the shoulders and come down into the body. And you kind of think of it as a cylinder that's back here. That's like this right here. Whoops. It's a good way to start thinking about it. So that if I get rid of some of the other surface details, if that's the way that the neck connects in the back of the head. So one thing that's interesting about the way that people's neck connects to their head is that a lot of people, they assume that the neck is straight up and down, but it's really more curved. You know, our heads actually sit a little bit in front of our bodies. You know, we don't generally sit unless you're standing at attention. You know, your neck isn't directly underneath your head. It's more sitting out in front or sitting out behind. And this is one where I did not start with an oval, so my character is not going to look correct. It's not going to look similar to the other if I drew it again. So, but I'll try.
So that was a point that people were bringing up. They were wondering how your characters always manage to look the same. Is it because you're starting with that same oval shape?
Yes, it's really important, especially, you know, and one thing that I kind of want to show is that, you know, you don't have to start with an oval. If your character is not going to be based on a more human proportion, you can start with anything. Just so long as you start with the same thing every time. So for example, I put some of these guys together. So these are the ways that you can start a character shape, and they can be the same character every time, but you're starting with your same shape. It can be, yeah, usually organic characters like humans. Animated characters are more rounded instead of square, but you could even do a square shape. But so just as an example here, if I wanted to make a character out of this shape, you know, maybe this is a very, very cartoony character. And this same shape, though, will help me draw the basics of that character every single time that I draw it. Just like if I took this shape and I wanted to draw a character that is definitely not a normal oval, it's just a little bit wider, but I could give them very small ears, and I could give them very, very little eyes, and a bigger nose, and a wide mouth, and use this oval shape to be a more rounded character shape. Let me try. I started with something that was very square. I might still round the edges a little bit. I think it's fun too to start with a shape and try to figure out a new character from it. It can be very interesting. So, you know, maybe it won't be a very good character when you're done with it, but it's always fun to explore, and maybe you'll find something that's different that you really like. So if I start with this, and I give this person some pointy ears, and put in some eyes. Still using the same basic positions though. I'm still using those lines for the exact same thing to determine where the eyes go, where the nose goes, where the eyebrows are going to be. I already know where this is going. It's almost a Lego vampire or something. But that's a character that I started not with an oval, but with a square. So if I want to draw this character again, I would definitely want to start with that same basic shape.
How do you choose what characters to draw? Are you just like pulling these from your mind? Are these people you've drawn before? Do you read a lot of comics? Like, how do you get your ideas for characters?
Well, I mean, when I'm drawing stuff like this, usually the characters that I draw are more like the character design that I showed you at the beginning.
Mhm.
They're comic booky, manga, anime kind of, you know, characters. But I do like to draw more cartoony stuff, and so, you know, starting with weird shapes is usually the starting point for drawing any or coming up with any new sort of character. Where it's if I'm drawing something that it's going to be an alien, you know, I might want to start with, you know, that sort of classic upside down egg shape. But for the most part, when I'm drawing like I'm doing now, I'm just making stuff up. I'm just sort of exploring, and that's one of the fun things to do. And, you know, when we're exploring different characters and sort of just sketching, we don't really care too much about like what the final drawing is going to look like. It's really just about coming up with ideas for the character, just a basic concept. So that, you know, this is a very messy drawing, but you can see, you know, the basics of what that character might look like. If I like the idea, then I would take that idea and I would draw on top of it. I would, you know, if I was drawing on paper, I would use tracing paper to trace over the shape and do a more finished drawing. Digitally in Photoshop, or I would actually make another layer, and I would sort of dim the other one, and then I might start working on a more finished drawing and explore like what are the actual details of the character's face. And then, you know, I'm still being very messy here, but then, you know, then we're worried more about like what does the character look like in detail as opposed to what's the overall just general shape. So for me, I generally tend to have a style that I stick with, and that's always important too, is to work on developing the style that you want to aim for. So, you know, if you want to do very comic book style action adventure sort of stuff, there's lots of books out there that you can find that show you how to draw that kind of classic style. If you're interested in doing much more cartoony stuff, that stuff's out there too. But it really comes down to choosing your starting shapes. So if you want to draw something that is very cartoony, you know, where you've got that like Adventure Times sort of thing, you know, you're still starting with basic shapes. I'm doing a terrible job here, but you know, your whole character can start as a whole shape. I don't know, this is like an Eggman or something. So it's just good to find shapes that you like to work with, that you feel, you know, are going to be the building blocks and foundations of your characters, and work on those. One thing that I wanted to show is playing around with our proportions. So when I started, you know, I showed you these proportions with the guidelines, and that's great. You know, you can have your oval and your eye line about halfway, and then the nose halfway between the eyes and the mouth halfway between the nose and the chin, and all that's great. But you can totally change that and experiment on different proportions. So for example, I've got two starting shapes here. They're the exact same shape. And if I start with one, and I put a line down the center, and I'm going to draw a character looking straight at you, but instead of putting the line across the middle, I'm instead going to put the line down here. And now I'm going to be drawing like some sort of brainiac character who has the eyes way down here, and the nose and the mouth and their ears. But maybe they have a really, really big head because they have a giant brain. So you can get really cartoony with that just by changing your starting lines, the line, your eye line, and where your nose and your mouth go. If I take the same shape and I do something like this, and I go for something that's more brawny, now this is the exact same shape, but a very different character. This character I'll give a much wider neck. This is, I don't know, maybe this is a professional wrestler. So the same shape, very different characters. If I do something like in the middle like normal, I probably would have wound up with something very different from those. And again, like at this point, I have the eye line going across the middle like I would normally do, but maybe I'll give this person a nose that's way down here and a mouth that's way down here. And I'll give them a very long nose. Because that's the interesting thing about drawing characters and drawing people, is that everybody doesn't look the same. Some people have longer noses, some people have shorter noses, some people have wider noses. And it's good to practice drawing different kinds of characters too, because that means that we're learning how to draw new characters, and we're not just drawing the same looking characters over and over again. It's not good if our characters all wind up looking the same.
Okay, we've gotten some requests for you to spend a little bit of time talking about eyes and eyebrow details.
Okay. Okay, so there are a million different ways to draw eyes. There really are. If you go looking for people's guides on how to draw eyes, everybody has a different way to do it. I do very cartoony stuff. I don't do super realistic stuff. So here is the way that I generally tend to construct eyes. I'm going to start on this shape right here. So I'll do it this way. This is the way that I usually like to draw the eyes. So when I'm drawing the character at a very simple stage like this, and I might be drawing a character at in this sort of simple style while I'm working on a comic book page. So if I'm working on a character in a comic book, I'm going to start with a very simple drawing like this. And at this point, I usually just put in a circle for the eyes. And again, this is the way that I do it. There's not a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. There's different ways to do it. This is the way that I do it. I think of the eyes when I'm putting them in as being where the pupils are going to be. So if I put in some other little quick details, just so I've got the beginning of a character going. At this point, really all I've got is a character who has circles for eyes. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those circles and I'm going to use them as a guide to put in the rest of the details around them. And this is a very, for me, this is a very comic book, almost anime style of doing eyes. So if this is the pupil, I might start putting in the top of the eye, the eyelid, the eyelashes, and the bottom. And I still have that original circle. It winds up being an eye. It still winds up being the iris and pupil of our eye. And all of a sudden, now my character that just had sort of like wide-eyed circles for eyes is now looking a little bit upset or mean. If I do another one, I take that same circle. I want the character to be a little bit more wide-eyed. I'm still putting in the top of the eye, the eyelashes, and the bottom. Pupil and the iris. And so I started with that same circle, but one is the eyes open and one is the eye looking a little bit mean. So that's generally how I construct the eyes. Eyes, like I said, there's a lot of different ways to do it. There's another way that you can think about the eye is if you're drawing an eye, you can start thinking of the eye as a ball, a three-dimensional ball, because that's what it is. So if I'm drawing an eye, I might start with the actual eyeball and then put in the details around it. That's starts to get to be towards a more three-dimensional view of an eye. You know, someone's cheek might be here and their nose over here, you know, but I tend to do very cartoony stuff. I usually don't get that detailed. And that's okay. Everybody kind of has to find the style that they really want to try to go for. Do you want to do more cartoony stuff? Do you want to do more super realistic stuff? There's not a wrong way or a right way to do it. It's really what works for you and what you think looks cool. So in terms of eyebrows, so I always start with eyebrows as being a line. I always put in a line to start. And I don't worry when I'm at the beginning, I don't worry too much about the details of the eyebrows. I just worry about where they're going to be. So is this character going to have a sort of resting eyebrow like this, or are they going to have a more a more mean eyebrow, you know, or are they going to be more, they're going to be more upset, which doesn't really work as well with that eye. So once I have the basic in there of where the eyebrow is probably going to be, I just put it in with a little line. I go back in and I start to add detail. So I tend to do eyebrows as this kind of detail, little slashes, to sort of mimic the idea that, you know, our eyebrows are made out of hair. So, you know, but you could do an eyebrow that is very, very cartoony. That's an actual shape. You know, for this guy over here, I might have an eyebrow that's really big and thick. And it's really just a solid shape. One thing that's interesting or helpful about where our eyebrows wind up being is that you probably notice that when I'm drawing characters, I usually am connecting the eyebrow to the nose. So if I wanted to put in, this guy has a little nose down here and he has eyebrows up here, but realistically, his nose is not just this flat shape glued to the front of his face. Our noses are three-dimensional. And so usually I will drop a line down from the eyebrow, which represents, you know, the brow, the way that the top of our brow connects to our nose, and drop that down to the nose down here. Now, if I wanted to get more exact about it, this is probably, you know, a little bit more exacting, a little bit more of how that nose is constructed in 3D space. I tend to keep things very simple for a character that is looking from the side. Let me just get a couple details in there real quick. So for figuring out where the nose goes here, I've got my little starting line. And that's all I really needed to start with. That's you know, I'm keeping it simple so that I'm figuring out all of the basic places where stuff goes before I worry about details. Because if I worry about details first and I go in and I draw a really cool nose in there, and then I look at it later with the way that everything else went, and I go, oh, that's not really where their nose should be, then I wasted time, and I'm probably going to have to erase that nose and start over again. So I started with just a little line. But when I'm figuring out where the eyebrow goes above the eyes like this, I'm also thinking about how that connects to the nose. Because in a side view like this, your eyebrow, and again, it's always helpful to look in a mirror. When you turn your head to the side, you can see where your nose connects to the top of your eyes above your eye sockets. And so my eyebrow here is dropping down into a line. It's no longer the eyebrow, it's really just a line that represents the edge of your brow. If you feel your eye sockets, you can see how that connects to your nose. And then that nose comes down to that line that I put in. And you know, adding details then like nostrils, figuring out maybe where the top of that nose is in 3D space. You know, sometimes it helps to think of things like it's almost chiseled out of stone, something, you know, a little bit less organic than a human face. You can imagine that the planes of the face are made out of something like stone or wood or something that is easier to imagine being carved, and that can help you figure out sometimes where the surfaces of the face go. So for example, here I'm just imagining that the nose is a flat rectangle shape. Now that's not the way that this character's nose is probably going to look. And when I actually finish the drawing, I will probably get rid of this line, but it might help me figure out where some of the details of the nose go when I'm drawing them. So if I put it back in as a very light line that I'm going to get rid of later, you know, it might help me figure out that, well, this is really the bottom of the nose here. So that's where there's going to be some shading down there. And maybe if the light was coming this way and I'm shading the nose, you know, it helps me figure out where that shading goes. It really helps to think of things as break things down into the simplest shapes that you can think of. Circles, ovals, triangles, and rectangles. So I hope that helps a little bit with eyebrows and nose. Started to sound like Gollum there. Eyebrows is. So if I go back here real quick, you can look that I've used some of these same ideas in this drawing as I was creating this character design. So from the front, I really didn't worry about too much about where this character's nose connects to her eyebrows. But if I wanted to, I could go in and connect that. But in the 3/4 view here, it definitely became something that I wanted to show. My style usually, from the front, I try not to put in too many details about nose. I try to keep things fairly simple and cartoony. And then when the characters turn to the side, then you start seeing more definition of where that nose connects to the brows. And again, these lines, you can see that my eyebrow is lining up. My eye is lining up, the nose is lining up. So that helps me figure out where those things go when the character turns to look to the side. Do we have any other questions?
So we had one person wondering, is there anything that you do in the early stages for children versus adult faces, or male versus female? Or is that something that you build out? You know, you make a stronger jaw or a tinier face. Is that something, when do you start to make those differences?
So for me, a lot of the characters that I've been drawing in comic books for a while are all sort of teenage characters. So, you know, teenagers have different body proportions than adults, and children have different body proportions than teenagers. A lot of the characters that I've been drawing, you know, it's really just choosing the starting shape for the character. If I'm drawing one of my female characters, I start with a very similar oval shape. And if I'm drawing a male character, I might start with again a very similar oval shape and really change it as I go along. But if I'm drawing a character, male or female, who is super, you know, muscly or big, or they're going to have a very wide face, then I start with a wider oval. I always start with ovals for my characters, because that's just the, you know, I'm going for that sort of style, not a super Adventure Times, you know, cartoony style, but more of a comic book style. And I generally tend to start with the same couple oval shapes. I might widen it for a character that I know is going to be a wider character. I do tend to, sometimes when I'm drawing the male characters, I do tend to start with the same sort of oval, and often have to build out the chin a little bit to add a little bit more angularity to the chin and to the jawline and the chin. But often they'll start with the same basic shape.
And everyone, I don't know if you have any in front of you, but everyone is very interested to see if you have any totally finished in color drawings that you could show.
Oh, me?
Yes.
I can show you a comic book thing that I'm working on.
Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot, but
That's okay.
people are very interested.
I will show a page from a comic book that I'm working on.
Awesome.
Just have to find one. So my comics are in black and white. It's going to take a while to open. So I'm working on this comic now. This is a science fiction comic. So these are some of the characters that I'm working on. This is actually the page that I was working on earlier today.
Oh, wow.
So I'm working on shading these two bottom panels. This is the stuff that I'm working on with this is the way that my characters kind of turn out. So, you know, I have some very different characters. This character, she starts with a much more oval face, a much more rounded face. And this character starts with this one over here. I don't know if you can see that. This one over here starts with a much more traditional oval, like I was showing. This one over here starts with a much more rounded face because she has a rounded oval because she has a much more rounded face. And this character here starts with a much more elongated oval because he has a longer face. So, and I start with those same shapes every time. Each character has their sort of own starting point. So, but yeah, this is a fun thing to work on. I'm working on stuff with spaceships and robots and not laser guns, but you know, science fiction stuff. So.
Well, nice. You just got a lot of cools and awesomes and wows in the chat. So I think they are very impressed.
Cool. Well, I hope people learned some stuff today. I just wanted to sort of give a basic overview of tools to use to construct characters.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for everybody that came out with us this evening. So I think that's pretty much everything.
Oh, did you want to do the link?
Oh yeah, guys. So Brian has a link here for his Dropbox. So it's something that you can open up the link. I'm sharing it in the chat to everybody. So you can open that up, and that's just kind of something that you can practice with. You can download it, you can print it out at home, and that will show you. And that has the female drawing that you were showing us.
Yeah, it has the character design on it that shows how I construct the characters, and then it has some ovals that you can draw on top of with some examples of you know, you can look at the examples and draw on then draw on the blank ovals that are on the same page to try your hand at learning from the examples. So I thought it would be something that would be potentially helpful to print out and just draw right on top of.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And I hope you all have a good evening. Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.